I wanted to start back in 1979 when David first approached you to write for Kronos. And at that point, you had stopped creating notated music. And, I was wondering what it was about Kronos that inspired you to return to that route.
Well, part of it was I really liked David, and, when I started talking to him, I really was caught up with his infectious enthusiasm for, trying to get me to do the music for them. And it wasn't hard because I really was excited by their playing. When I first heard their audition tape that they sent to Mills, it was a pretty amazing experience to hear these young players, the kind of energy they were putting out in string quartet. So that was really I think what got it started. And David was very persistent in keeping after me to begin to put some notes down on paper.
Do you recall any of those early sessions together, collaborating, and what that was like?
Yeah, the first time we got together, they came up here to the ranch, and I had, at that point, I was thinking about trying to do something in between notated music and non-notated music, and something where they could have little ideas that they could build upon. Just I sketched out on little pieces of paper and hand them out to them, and we worked on that for about an hour, and then David turned to me and said, I think we need something just totally written out for the way we work. So that was kind of a crucial point in our working together, is that it sort of forced me into making all the compositional decisions.
Prior to Kronos, had you done much work for string quartet?
I had written a string quartet in 1960 when I was a student at UC Berkeley. And so it was 20 years later that I wrote my next one. I was always very keen on the string quartet format. From the beginning, I studied the Bartok quartets when I was in school, and really learned a lot from what he did with string writing. And so, I find it's a really good form. It's a very manageable form. It's enough people to really get an interesting dialogue and texture drawing contrapuntally, and it covers a nice range, although I never felt the string quartet had enough bass for me. I always wanted to have a bass player there too. But, the great thing is that string quartet players are kind of like family, and they really work good as a unit. So you can write things that basically let them use those talents of association and of intuition and things that they've developed together as a group to fine-tune the music. You get some very polished ideas happening in string quartet.
Now, David mentioned that there was a piece called The Wheel, at which point you collectively arrived at a sound. It had, no vibrato, and you sort of all...
It was kind of like a ballad, sort of like a jazz ballad, simple, and, right from... Well, I guess it might be the first piece, that we really stressed not having any vibrato in it. So it would have this kind of sound, something like, ancient music, not a real modern sound, but a non-vibrato sound, a more austere feeling.
Now, so David said that piece was not just a turning point for the collaboration with you, but also a turning point for Kronos, period. Was there a feeling that something momentous had occurred, or is that more something in David's mind's eye than yours?
Well, he probably has different, had a different experience with it than me. But I think that I understand what he's saying, and I think it was because of the nature of the music. I think that for them was a bigger issue. It gave them a way to play together that maybe they hadn't considered before. And they started developing that a lot, this kind of almost disembodied sound that I really like to have in a string quartet. Not all the time, but, something that they can draw on.
Can I ask you to maybe delve into that a little more? When you say disembodied sound, what do you mean?
Well, the full vibrato and everything is a very expressive sound on a string. And if you take that away, you have another area to work in where that draws the listener forward more. You have to lean into the sound to really get the experience, rather as having a big, vibrant vibrato, where you can just sit back and bathe in that. It was just an aesthetic thing that I was interested in getting at in the sound of the quartet. It's more like a medieval, music experience. And I think we worked a lot on our group idea in that way, talking about it in rehearsals and then later on when I started gave them, things to do in just intonation, that they were already prepared to deal with that because it takes a non-vibrato kind of sound to effectively produce intervals in just intonation.
And when you say you were giving them things to do, were you almost giving them exercises or giving them, equipping them somehow to evolve?
Well, just in the rehearsals, we would go over passages, talk about them, and I would either sing them or demonstrate them some way that we could make an exercise out of a certain passage. This wasn't purely coming from me because this is the way Kronos works. They really go deep into details in the work they do. Sometimes they'll work hours on just fine-tuning a chord. A lot of rehearsals, I was kind of worried they wouldn't get the piece learned because they delved so deeply into the details, and we were close to a performance date, and I thought, we'll only get the rest of the music learned, But it's the key to actually a good performance is perfecting some part of the piece.
Now, how has that collaborative element evolved across, 24 years later? What is it like now compared to then?
Well, it's like we have built together a kind of dialogue and understanding, so that when I bring in a new score to them, they have a very good feeling about what I want. And it isn't like we start from scratch every time because we've already worked out some of the aesthetic ideas. And it's only when I bring in something that, really is quite different, and sometimes we spend more time on it trying to get it.
Have the personalities, the confidence, just the overall way you work together, has that changed significantly? Not really. I think it's from the beginning, the mechanics of five of us, even though the personnel in the cello seat has changed over the years, we still work, I think, very much like we always did. I like to give them as much time and freedom before I actually enter into it, to see what they will hear in the music without, and then, because a lot of times when they learn a piece without me, before I step into the rehearsals, they come up with things that I think that I didn't consider, and I think are really valuable contributions to the piece. Could I get you to maybe provide an example or two of how they might take something you've done and infuse it with something you haven't considered? Well, sometimes it is hard. It's a hard thing to put into words, but they'll just make a slight change in tempo, or they will play something with a different stringing effect than I considered using there. Often or play it slower than I thought that it would go, and get into just getting into more fine details in the interactions of the four of them.
it isn't necessarily. I'm trying to think of one piece that there was something. I can't think of it right now, but I know there was a piece once when I just was so surprised by what they came up with. It wasn't something I envisioned.
Sun Rings, a key major work you wrote for Kronos. Can you talk to me about the challenge of creating a piece of that scope for the group?
Well, it was, it was a long process getting to the point of even writing Sun Rings. David and I went down to Cape Kennedy and spent a few days just to get into the mood, and saw a launch of the one of the space shuttles, and toured around down there, getting a feeling of the place. So that kind of like inspired both of us. We came back, and then I started writing. I guess this was late, maybe in August of 2001, July or August, I can't remember, it was in the summer. Started the piece out, and then 9/11 happened, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks, because I realized that we were now going to go to war, and the mood in the United States was very ugly for me. I mean, people were waving flags around, and this extreme kind of false patriotism was very disturbing. So I actually stopped writing for a while, and suddenly it took me a while to get back to it. But when I came back, I wanted to have that as part of the piece, that it would be a piece more about understanding and compassion than space, just space exploration. I thought that had to be a part of it all. That one message should be that we as human beings have to grow before we take our culture out into space. So that made, I decided to add a choir for that, to get the human element, the voices, with the string quartet and the space sound.
Is there a sense for you that anything is possible when you write for this group, that really the sky's the limit?
Yeah, I mean, this piece, of course, afforded that kind of opportunity. It wasn't just a string quartet. It wasn't even a piece that added another instrument or even another theater piece. It was a piece that involved a team, like Willie Williams, very important component, like putting together the visuals. So we had a lot of talk together. I had an assistant who worked a lot for me on modifying the space sounds so I could use them more as instruments. Is David Dvorin, and he was, for me, an important helper in getting this piece mounted. And he also had a lot of the technical experience with computers to help me with that part of it. So it was the first time I'd been involved for a while in a team effort like that. I mean, I was writing the music, but a lot more had to happen to really bring it all together. Larry Neff did amazing things with the light visuals, and it seemed like every time somebody would come in with an idea, it was just like, oh yes, everybody's getting this. They're all on the same page with it.
Requiem for Adam, which of course is intensely personal, and of course you knew Adam very well, and Guion shared his birthday. Can you provide some insight into the process of writing that very personal work?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of loss for Kronos around that time, and Adam was, of course, the most significant, loss for the group and for David personally. And because of Dave and I being very close friends, and we had spent a lot of time together with our families, and Adam and my son were both born on the same day, a year apart. So we had this kind of connection, and I was with Adam the day before he died. He died on an Easter Sunday. We were there. I was at David's house on Saturday, and we were sitting around joking at him, was asking David for more money to go out. And David said, I just gave you $25 yesterday. It's kind of one of those funny things, we're joking around. And the next day when I got the news that Adam had suddenly died, I almost immediately thought, oh, something has to happen here. This is too tragic. And I had already been thinking about Requiem quartets for Mario, who was the stillborn baby of John Monod. So I wrote a Requiem for him, and I wrote a Requiem for Hank Dutt's partner, who died of AIDS just before that. So Requiem for Adam was the biggest work of that and most personal because I was so close to Adam and David and Regan and Pegman. So, it was a strange thing to do in a certain way because it put David through so much pain to play this piece. I think it was maybe a double-edged sword. He got a sort of a release out of it in a certain way, but, after the first premiere, I remember we just grabbed each other and cried for about 10 minutes. And that's the most powerful thing I think we've ever done together.
Tell me what it was like translating those thoughts into music.
Well, David had sent me a lot of music that Adam loved, and I didn't know what to do with that, but a lot of the music that he liked was kind of like punk rock, and edgy, young people like, kind of young people like. A lot of it was dark, edgy. So I wanted to have, some of that in the music, but I also wanted to have a feeling that, of a spirit, part of spirit kind of turning into light. So I tried to get that kind of a sound in a quartet, and often the quartet movements go way up into the high register and harmonics and become very ethereal and light sound. So I tried to develop the movements so they would point toward those areas. And of course the cortejo, the funeral march, I think I definitely made it kind of scary and loud, especially the opening. It's a shock when it first hits, very loud and clangorous, and I wanted to have the shock of what really happened because he died suddenly. And although this has been criticized a lot by, the press, it doesn't fit into the movement because it comes in and shocks you and jolts you when you hear the sound. To me, that's what it was. That was the heart of the piece. That was the death moment.
What element of your personal spirituality came into this?
Well, I think the things that I like. In the cortejo, for instance, my model for the music, even though maybe nobody hears of that in it, is the kind of like New Orleans funeral march where people march behind the cortege with trombones and trumpets and cymbals and stuff, and create this kind of music that's not like our ordinary concept of church music. So that was a model for me. The ascending the heaven ladder, the first movement, was again all the momentum of the music is rising, and the whole movement is very unified. It ties together these elements. Elements overlap and turn up in different contexts during the movement. So it was mainly a feeling of ascent. That death has something about ascent in it too. So that my spirituality is kind of homegrown. I don't belong to any organized religion, but I've been very involved with Eastern thought and raga. So, in general, what that's taught me is be open and revere the mystery of our existence and see what develops in life. and keep open to it all. So I wanted that kind of expressed in the, all the music I do, but especially in this piece.
What was it like to work with David during that period?
I remember that as I was showing David's yet unfinished quartet at that time, he was totally in agreement with the direction I was giving it, and I don't remember, like in the rehearsals, us having to really struggle a lot to bring the piece to life. But the main element that always was hanging in the air was that this was not just playing another piece. And I was always aware of that not only for David, but I think all the quartet members, it was, this is something that's going to be put in place of the life of Adam Harrington, and as a kind of a monument that pays tribute to his life. So that's what I remember about it.
Let me get you to describe the personal connection you have to the group and its mission.
Well, they've certainly taught me an awfully lot in many ways. One of the things that I felt was amazing about Kronos was that as they rehearsed, they were able to be extremely critical of each other and still never take any of that personally. That was a big lesson for me, because I've been in a lot of bands and I've worked with a lot of musicians, and if you say to somebody, hey, you're out of tune there, they might stomp off the stage, With Kronos, it was always on a really professional and deep level of seeking the right solution for whatever the problems that come up. And the fact that they would spend hours just getting a tempo right, or an interval in tune, and keep focused on it, was a big lesson for me in group rehearsal. And I've learned a lot about writing quartets, of course, just by being with them. It's like, I'm not a string player, so coming in and working with string players was just like school all the time with them. I just learned so much about all the different ways they can use their bow, different pressures of the bow, even changing bows to get a different sound, and the way that the quartet is capable of so many kinds of formats. Like it could be one soloist with three people accompanying, or it can be four people in a very dense contrapuntal dialogue. So many different ways that it can be organized. I kept learning about that, every piece I'd write, or even other pieces I'd hear them play of other composers, how they would approach it. So it was really being in school about that, and also just the kind of humanity of the group, and the fact it has always been about family. It comes in to work with and sort of gets absorbed into the Kronos family. So it's a lot about people as much as it is about music. That's something that appeals to me a lot.
Now, my final question for you is, how would you describe Kronos' importance to the world of music at large?
They blazed a trail, that wasn't there. They cut through, and they brought a lot of people with them. The fact that they reached out. David, always thought of the string quartet as a kind of an open canvas that could include any kind of music, any kind of collaboration with anyone. And that was certainly not there before them. So there's so many people who have used Kronos as their model for establishing a group, even if they're not a string quartet, saxophone quartets and other ensembles. I don't think there's hardly a modern music ensemble around that hasn't been affected by Kronos. vastly influential. I think they've brought music into a very positive place, used it in a very positive way that has inspired a lot of people and just raised the whole level of performance and appreciation of our work that's being done today.